This is Richard Fowler. I'm John Kilpatrick with Okolona Aikido, Louisville, Kentucky, USA. And we've been following this system which more or less works. Right now we're changing, I don't know whether it'll be obvious in these videos, but we're changing up the way we're practicing some. And today we want to look at Sankyo, and we want to look at the leading for Sankyo. And so when we're with leading, there's certain elements that have to happen. So if Richard is and we practice with knives a lot. We try to practice with empty hand, just so we'll be used to empty hand stuff, but a whole lot of our practice is with knives. And so what we're doing, I'll tell you, let's turn around the other way. So what we're doing is, for years, we just worked on leading and figuring out how it worked. We saw O-sensei and some other top Aikido people leading, and then we have been working, trying to get where we understand it. And so with a leading, if he stabs with ski, my movement is like this. And there's certain key things about this that have to happen for it to work. And I keep talking about these over and over again. The only other people I know of that lead consistently are the Tenshin Aikido people. And I see them lead consistently. When they talk about it a little differently than the way we do, so I doubt they understand it like we do, but their movement seems right to me. Now, almost everybody makes the kind of movements that we make, but they don't put all the pieces into it that would make it leading, so they're not leading. And now, the hardest thing about leading is what I just did, and that is to move my hand first and then move my body. When we get up here and somebody's attacking, we panic and we just want to get out of there. So we start moving. And I think probably the simplest way to think about this when you're practicing. Now, one thing is, in Aikido, they teach you to start with your hands down here at your sides. So if I have my hands down there and he goes to, by the time I get them up, I've been stabbed. So there's no, if you're starting with your hands down here, you can't do this. The Tenshin people tend to have their hands up in this area, which is what we do. We've been working on this for years and worked it out, and I just came across them a few months ago. I didn't know anybody else was doing this, and they are doing it pretty consistently. So to get yourself to do that, one thing is you need to have your hands up, but you still panic. You still don't want, and particularly if your partner attacks quickly. So what we want is, and get distance, is that do it as a sword cut. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise my sword and then pivot and cut. So as he goes to attack, so this is, now we don't usually have a sword and we don't do these exaggerated movements, but the issue here is timing. So when he starts to move, I raise my sword and then I cut. And actually this movement is where I first saw the leading. And that is that Saito was practicing with somebody, and Saito raised his sword to attack, and the guy stabbed, and Saito cut off his hand, except it was a wooden sword, so it didn't do that. But anyway, you get the idea. And I knew that you can't just step out of the way when somebody stabs at you, because we are not nice to each other. We really try to stab each other, and we knew that you can't step out of the way. So when he did that, I knew something special was going on. So the first element of this is that you have to move your hands first. This has to come up first. Well, I moved my body in because I started to do the whole thing. But you come up, and then you pivot and cut down. Now, because I'm playing with the sword, I'll talk about this, but it's really not part of this discussion. When I bring this up, I can't bring it over my head like this, because then when I pivot, he's attached to the sword. It will pull him right into me. So when I bring it up in front and then cut down. I don't bring it up over my head. So that was free. That's not really part of this discussion. I won't charge you. So when he's doing this, then what we did for years is just pivot like this without touching our partner to make sure we were leading properly. And so what we've been doing recently, and we haven't made any more videos because we've been working on this and thinking it all through and all, is combining the leading with the structure break. And when you combine the leading with the structure break, and just to show you that movement without a throw or anything, we come here and then press this down. So, and we've talked about this on the other videos, but with a structure break, you're pushing the guy down and pulling him. If you're going forward, you're pulling him forward a little bit. And I guess, you know, we haven't given names to some of this. Maybe they have Aikido names, but they're not Aikido techniques. And so we just call, let's back up a little bit more. So we just call this an inside structure break. So if he comes, see, and so the key thing here is that when he starts, my hands come up, and then I pivot, and then I'm putting, no throw, but I'm pushing his hand down and pulling his head forward. And this is very soft. If a big mistake, now I might have to move his hand some because he's moving with me. I don't want his hand to go back to his body, and if I push straight down and he's coming forward, it goes back to his body and it doesn't work very well. So here we're combining the structure break and the lead. And for the way we do things, you probably can't make the structure breaks work very well if you can't do the leading. So now we're looking at Sankyo. Now Sankyo is much more difficult than this basic structure break. And the reason it's much more difficult is because you have to grab the guy. And when you grab the guy, it's hard not to mess up your lead. It's hard not to distract him and get him upset by the fact that you grabbed him. And it's just hard to grab a guy correctly. To get a Sankyo, to get a good Sankyo when he stabs. Now I'm not into Sankyo technique today, that's next time. But you've got to get the correct grip on his hand to get a good Sankyo. Well, that takes a lot of practice. That's not so easy. So what we're going to try to do today is just look at bringing the lead into a Sankyo position. And when you're leading, you don't want to push his hand outside or pull it inside. You know, if he's trying to stab me and I push his hand away, that's an awful lot like a parry. And everybody practices against parries. And if he's trying to stab me and I'm pushing his hand away, he's going to fight me. I'm interfering with what he's trying to do. But if he tries to stab and I just lift his hand, for some reason that doesn't bother people if it's part of a lead. It's that reflex arc has started and he's into that reflex arc, and my actions don't bother him. So the setup for Sankyo, the way I was taught it, is that as he stabs, and this is a setup. Now I'm assuming y'all know what Sankyo is. I guess we could go ahead and throw a Sankyo so that you see what it is, see? And so that's Sankyo the way we throw it. Now, I don't think I would, unless I just fell into it accidentally, I wouldn't do a Sankyo to throw it. What I would do the Sankyo to take the knife. And we'll look at that we plan to look at that in our next video. So here, my hands come up, this comes up in front of his face and this comes up at the same time. So this is part of the lead. And this is the way I was taught this. This is not a strike. It's really a distraction, the way they thought of it, to keep him from hitting me with that other hand. I've got this in the way so he can't hit me with the other hand as I step through here. So when he comes, my hands go out and they go up together, and then I really start the Sankyo technique. And this, if you play with this some, I think you'll see that this is a whole lot harder to do. Just this much of the Sankyo is a whole lot harder to do than just a simple structure break.